Well, welcome to everybody, and let's go ahead and get started. In today's presentation, we have three topics to cover. The first one is an overview of the Business Analyst extension. The second one is about getting to understand your customers and their demographics. And the third one is, what can the Business Analyst do for you as far as decision-making goes when you want to expand your business? So we'll go ahead and get on with the first lesson. Why do you want to use Business Analyst? Well, one of the main things is to get an idea of your customer distribution. You can make maps like this where you have your stores and customers displayed around those stores, and you can visually see where those people are coming from. And when you learn about some of the extra data that comes with Business Analyst, given those point locations, you can find out other characteristics at those locations like income, age, and spending habits. The next thing you may want to do is find out more about your customers. So you know where they're located, but where are they coming from and where might you focus your marketing efforts? Are you getting more customers from one area than another? Those low areas you may want to use to focus marketing. Also, you may analyze your store locations. Given a store location, what are the demographics around that store? Here we have what we consider our best store in Austin, Texas, and we've got a color-coded green shaded map underneath it describing some attribute or some characteristic that looks to be really good, or in the dark green area, maybe something is happening there. Maybe income level is high. It's also located near some highways. Now, what if you wanted to locate a new store? In locating a new store, you may want to find places that meet those same characteristics. So here we go to Chicago and find a point location that's located between two highways and also has the similar green shading or demographic, whatever that is, the income level possibly for that area. Well, GIS has been used in business for a while, but it's just now becoming much more popular. Originally, GIS was used back in the 60s for forestry and agricultural problems, but how can it be applied to businesses? Well, there's sort of a supply chain that happens with products and how it goes from raw materials to a customer. So here you might have some raw materials being collected or suppliers bringing things in for processing. Maybe there's some shipping that happens. Maybe you need to have warehouse locations for storage or assembly purposes. And there's trucks and other pieces of equipment that help to carry out each of these procedures. There's store properties where sales happen, and then deliveries have to occur. Well, each one of these items has a location associated with it. Should you locate the warehouse near the raw materials or near your store properties or near the customers? How does this supply chain happen? Well, with GIS, you can analyze all aspects of your business, including customers and how you might market to those customers. Business Analyst focuses on the stores and customers and finding new customers, expanding your stores, and being able to market effectively. And the whole time, looking out for your competition and making sure you're staying a step ahead of them. Business Analyst is an extension product for ArcGIS. So the ArcGIS family of products has several extensions. Business Analyst is one of them. It comes with a lot of data and functionality to help you analyze your customers and stores. And then it has a real easy to use interface, as you'll see throughout the presentation here today. The data is quite extensive. It comes on a CD. It's about 6 gigabytes of data. Several organizations participate in supplying this data. So their business records, there's 11 million business point locations that you can use in any analysis that you perform. Major mall locations are also supplied. And then the underlying street network, all the streets for the U.S. come from the TeleAtlas company. There are about 1,000 demographic variables that you can compare at different geography levels. So the state level, the county level, the zip code level, the census, block and tract level, thousands of variables like age and income and different demographic variables. Also, there's some imagery that you can use as a backdrop for your map displays. This is the data that's supplied, but then you probably have your own data. You can incorporate your own data, which might be store and customer locations, but any GIS or attribute data that you have could be incorporated. So here, maybe we want to locate a store or a business around the Spokane airport. I've never been there, so I don't know what the area looks like. Well, we might zoom into it, turn on a couple of those data layers. Like here we can see the roads and where the airport is located, and those black dots are all the businesses located around the airport. Well, if we were thinking about picking a location for our business, we might compare it to existing businesses that are already there, and we might bring up a picture of the area that shows whether are we dealing with agricultural farmland or forests, or are we dealing with urban city areas. Here around the airport, it looks from the image like it's mostly agricultural areas. With Business Analyst, you can make many kinds of map displays that are very graphical. So this one here is a display of customers and stores. It's called a spider diagram. So the stores are at the center of the spider, and then those lines reach out to the customers. So each customer connects into its store, and we get an idea of a trade area or the region of influence around each store, where are customers being drawn from to get to those stores. Another kind of display you can create shows percentages of your customers around a store. The red circles here are the store locations. The yellow areas represent 40% of the nearest customers, the closest 40%, that go to each of the store locations. The orange areas and yellow combined represent 80% of your customer base per store. So here you're getting an idea of where your customers are coming from. The value in this kind of a display comes from adding this trade area to all that demographic information. 80% of your customers are in this area. What are the demographics? What kind of income level do we have inside that area? So remember, 1,000 variables or more that we can compare and look at to really understand that trade area. We can also look at a report of each of those areas. So here I have one page of a report, but you could get hundreds of pages, depending upon how many trade areas you have, even more. So here we're looking at just some simple variables like population and per capita income to see how they've changed over time and how they're expected to increase in the next 5 years. And this seems to be a pretty nice area. It looks like it's growing in population and expected to grow. Income levels are also expected to grow. I'd feel pretty confident if I was going to be developing in these areas. As I mentioned earlier, Business Analyst is an extension product that works with any of the ArcGIS family of applications. The extension here comes with a toolbar so that you can interact with the functionality. On the toolbar, there's the Business Analyst drop-down choice. And when you work through a project, you start at the top of this menu and work your way down. So you define a study area, set up your customers and stores, build trade areas, and then analyze them and create reports. Maybe later on or during the process, you add data from that business listings. No matter which of these choices you make from this menu, you'll be presented with a wizard or a set of panels to help step you through the process. So as you're defining a store, as you're setting up a store, you're guided through the process and asked questions along the way. So it makes it pretty easy to use and easy to learn. To also help with learning, we have a quick start tutorial. And the tutorial explains the 4 major things that you may do with the software: market analysis, citing a new facility, evaluating existing facilities, and analyzing your customers. You can click on any of these links, and then you'll be brought to a description of how to carry out that process. So here's customer analytics. You'd start by defining a study area, setting up stores, finding the competition, and more. It's quite a lengthy list to guide you through the process. As you click on each of these links, you're also brought to one of those wizards or set of panels to guide you through the process even further, to select data, to make choices that are going to affect the results. Each of these panels has two help buttons on it for context-sensitive help that you can then click on the panel to get help about each spot, or a help button just to get general help about the panel. Well, we'll go ahead and have a bit of a demonstration here and see what the Business Analyst extension looks like. Well, Business Analyst works inside of the ArcGIS application. So here I have ArcMap running with Business Analyst loaded. You see an extra toolbar up at the top there with the Business Analyst drop-down on it. Over to the left side is my table of contents that has already a lot of layers added to it. I didn't have to add these layers. Business Analyst comes with some specialized map documents that come preloaded with all these layers. This is the detailed map document, and it has all the roads and the layers of geography like block points and groups and census tracts and counties and on up from there. So I don't have to worry about adding the layers to the map. I might add my own, so my customers and stores or my own specialty layers. The map document here, well, you can go to the table of contents on the left side to turn layers on and off. Here I turned off the roads. Then you can see the display better over on the right side in the map display area. A lot of the layers come with built-in functionality. So the businesses layers near the top here, you notice it has a checkbox that's checked, but you don't see any of the businesses draw over in the map display area on the right side. Well, that's because Business Analyst has Business Analyst has preset a behavior for the businesses layer in this document so that it will only draw when you zoom in. It's scale dependent. So that means you'd have to zoom way in on a city to be able to then see the businesses for that city. One city at a time instead of all 11 million drawing at once, which would take a long time, and it would just put a big blotch on the map that we wouldn't even understand. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. So I'll really pick a study area. My study area is going to be the Las Vegas, Nevada area. And there's a jump to location choice on the Business Analyst menu. Jump to location is really a set of predefined bookmarks inside this specialized document. So I can zoom to any state, or as I click on Nevada here, I can zoom to cities in that state, Las Vegas or Reno. I'm going to zoom into Las Vegas. This is real handy because if you don't know where all the states are, or you don't know where some of the major cities are in a state, well, you have a predefined bookmark to zoom into that location. So here we are at Las Vegas. You notice I don't have any stores or customers right now. Maybe for my business, I want to locate a new business, and I don't have anything to begin with. The business I'd like to locate is some kind of a supply where I supply hotels in the area with some products. So I need to find my customers, and I need to find a centralized location for my supply store. So here, let's zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to grab the zoom in tool and draw a box around the area north of the Las Vegas airport. And as I get to this area, you notice the business is drawn now that I'm zoomed in. A lot of them drew, so I'm going to turn them off so the display isn't so cluttered. All right, so here I am zoomed in, and I want to find the hotels in the area because those are going to be my customers. So I'm going to go down to the data choice and add business listings. I want to add the hotel businesses to this map. This dialog is quite extensive, but it allows me to define a query. Out of all 11 million businesses, I want just the ones in my current extent. You can see, though, I could get all the businesses per state, per city, or per zip code. So here I'm limiting the query based on geography. And then we have some codes over here, standard industrial classification code, and then there's the NAICS code. These are industry identification numbers or codes. I don't have these memorized. So if I wanted to find the hotels, I can also type in a keyword. As I start typing in these letters, it's going to jump me alphabetically to those keywords. So here I'm searching for hotels around the Las Vegas airport. And now I can see the code. I don't have to memorize the codes though, because I can always search based on keyword. And I'm going to go ahead and let Business Analyst select out all those hotels in the area. These are my customers. I'm going to go ahead and change their color so they show up a little better. And the next thing I'm going to do is define my store location. Here I can see the customers and how they're distributed, but where should I put my business? I'm not sure. Well, I can use Business Analyst to help me out. And on the analysis menu choice, I'm going to go ahead and find the mean center. So what is the central location of all those businesses? Mean store center is going to tell me that. It's going to make a new layer, a new point layer, given those businesses. And the new point layer is going to be the centralized location where I can then get to any of those stores quickly and easily. All right, I'm going to turn the roads on here so you can get an idea of where that's located. It looks like Koval Road between Paradise and Flamingo Road over here. The next thing I want to do is create a trade area around there. My trade area is going to be drive time because I want to know how long is it going to take me to drive to my customers. So here I'll create a new trade area. I don't need any customer data to make this. I'm going to use the store. It's going to be a drive time trade area. So I'm going to create drive time polygons around that store. The drive time polygons are going to go out 1, 3, and 5 minute drive times. And then I'll be able to tell how close my customers are to the store and how long it'll take me to drive there to get to them to service them. So it takes a moment here to calculate those drive times. And right around the store, it shows me 3 categories, 1, 3, and 5 minute drive times. And it looks like most of my stores are within 5 minutes of that centralized point location. Well, we've just touched on the surface here of some of the Business Analyst functionality. What I'd like to do now is turn things over to Kyle and have him try to answer a couple of questions that you all have been typing in during the lecture portion here. So take it away, Kyle.
Thank you, Rob. Got a few good ones here we could probably cover before we go on to the next demo and lecture. Harlan from Louisville has asked, does it make a difference if your layers that you're bringing in is in a geodatabase or not? And it doesn't, because Business Analysts will read layers from different formats, whether if it's a personal geodatabase, if it's an SDE database for the more advanced GIS users, it could be an Excel format, it could be text, it could be XY, and it'll kind of step you through the wizards to bring in multiple types of data wherever your data might be housed in, which is a pretty neat function. So another question here to piggyback off that was Daniel in Washington. How do I get an Excel file of addresses into ArcMap? And that is as simple as if you have a tabular Excel format, it has zip codes, addresses in there. Business Analyst is smart enough to walk you through a wizard. It's almost just like installing a software package for every single part in BA. So if you were going to install a software package on your machine, you would just start out and you would run through a set of instructions, and it would kind of guide you along the way, and at the finish, you'd be done. Well, it's very similar to this, where you'd start out with an Excel file with addresses, and BA is smart enough to know where those addresses are, where those zip fields are. It pulls that information, and it'll populate it, and then plug it into ArcMap, and it'll be kind of it'll be a shapefile. So it's pretty neat. Bilal, I think it is, from Columbus, is asking, in the business layer, which is the Info USA business listings, do the number of employees and sales volume fields have reliable info? And it all depends on where you're coming from, and reliable is maybe a loaded comment, but we get this information from Info USA. They have certain models and certain analysis that they do before we get it, and some of that is getting information from the economic census. It's getting it from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, also the Department of Commerce. So they take certain public information from that, they run it through their models and they come up with certain sales volumes, and those are in thousands, so you can multiply them into millions. Let's see. I guess that helps answer. And then why you might see zeros in there would be that it's almost impossible to get information from every single business in the United States. Plus, some might be private, some might be government, and those figures just aren't there. And another question from Mike from Atlanta is asking about when is the data updated, and that is every year. We have yearly updates for the data. We have our demographers that go through and update certain demographic data. We get new data from our vendors, such as Info USA and the director of major malls, and they'll turn around. We'll kind of fashion it into a product and then release it. In part of the maintenance program, you get newly refreshed data and 5-year projections every year, and then plus every 6 months within that year, you get an update of the software. So for instance, right now we're in 9.2, and in 6 months from now, we're going to release we're in 9.1 right now, we're going to release 9.2 in 6 months. And then you'll have a new data update that will follow that. So those are some of the questions that I'll leave for right now and return it back to you, Rob.
All right, thanks a lot, Kyle. Well, just to review here a little bit about this first lesson. We looked kind of at just business analyst capabilities, some of the data that comes with it, and how to create a drive time trade area around a store location. And you get an idea that there's quite a bit here to work with. Well, let's go ahead on to the second portion of our presentation and try to get an understanding of customers and how do you understand their demographics? How do you learn their demographics? First, we'll start off with a look at how to get the data into Business Analysts. So if you have an extensive customer database, how do you turn that into one of those point maps? And then how do you make the demographic reports? Given a trade area, how do you learn what's going on inside that trade area to be able to understand the customer demographics? To enter store locations, you can really just type in the address of the store, and the ArcMap Business Analyst will draw the points up there for you. You could go around with a GPS unit and get the latitude-longitude coordinates at different locations. Or store and customer data work similar. You could get the data out of an existing database. So if your store data was in a database, you could use that. Or here I've got customer data. That might be in just a table. You might be thinking, wow, we don't have any of those geographic layers, but we do have tabular data. We've been keeping track of our customer records for a long time, and maybe you have their phone number or their zip code. Better yet, if you have their address, but anything geographic is great, and business analysts can use those geographic attributes to map your customers. It uses a process called geocoding and address mapping. Address mapping means, take that customer address, figure out what street they're located on, and then the geocoding part comes in when a point is created at that location. So business analyst reads that tabular data and turns a table into a map layer of points. Well, this allows you to look at the distribution of your customers. And then to go beyond that, you take your customer data and compare it with all the existing data that business analyst comes with. You can really get an idea of what kind of customers you have and their demographic characteristics. Well, I mentioned the term trade area a few times here, and I showed creating a trade area in Las Vegas around a store location based on drive times. That kind of a trade area doesn't need the customer data. I only needed to enter the point location of where my store is, and then the drive times were calculated from there. Some of the business analyst functions need customer data in order to be carried out. So you have an option here. Either you have the customer data or you don't to start with. A trade area is just an area of influence around a store. There's no size limit here. There's no predefined sizes of a trade area or shapes of a trade area. You create these with the business analyst functionality. So you pick the sort of the break points for each of the rings, like here in the simple ring trade area, the 3, 6, and 9-mile rings. You make those selections, but then after you make the trade area, then you analyze the customers and find out, hey, how many customers are within 9 miles or 6 miles? Or are my customers coming from a long ways away to come to my store? Equal competition areas, like let me move my mouse cursor here into area number 4, are defined around each store. So here you don't need customer data. You do need the store points, but then equal competition areas are created. These are polygons that define an area around a store that if you're in that polygon, you're closer to that store than any other store. Anywhere I go in this blue area is closer to store 4 than any of the others. Notice the roads underneath this layer here. You can kind of see the road lines drawing through. Equal competition areas don't consider the roads. So the drive times. These are just areas around a store that are closer to that store than any other. If you want to consider the roads underneath, then you'd create one of those drive time trade areas. Again, no customer data required. The underlying street network and attributes on those streets, like speed limit, are used to calculate these drive time rings. These are very useful because then you can answer questions like, how many customers do I have within 15-minute drive time? How many customers do I have that come from more than 15-minute drive time away? So here you're defining a trade area or a region around a store that has some influence, and then you analyze your customers inside that trade area. The threshold rings require customer data. So here, the rings go out from the store location, but in this case, the ring goes off and calculates how many customers are inside that ring. The yellow one represents 40% of the nearest customers. The nearest 40% of your customers are in that yellow area. The blue area represents the closest 80% of your customers. So now you're really creating that area of influence that contains most of your customers. Maybe these are used to make some marketing decisions. Where should you send mailers or flyers to? Which of these locations? Well, from each of the trade areas, you can create one of these reports, as I mentioned earlier. From these reports, you can get an idea of how the trade area is doing over time. Or in the next lesson, we'll look at how you can use this demographic data, maybe from your best store, to find other places in the U.S. that have the same characteristics. Maybe if you want to expand, you find the characteristics of your best store, and you look for those same places in other parts of the state or country to find new places where you might locate. The report also generates a graph or several graphs. Here we're looking at age breakdown over the 2005 and then predicted to 2010 to see how those different age categories might change over time. The dynamic ring analysis tool lets you click on prospective locations. So it is a tool that you use to move your mouse around on the screen, click some points. When you click, a green circle is created. You define the size of the circle, whether you want it to be 1 mile, 2 mile, or 3 mile. Then after clicking on the circle, Business Analyst gives you a graphical chart, a graph or chart. And here you can see how the population is changing over time. Now I have set the 3 or the 4 variables there, 1990, 2005, and 10, as the attributes I'd like to check. You can set any attributes you want. There's a change parameters button down at the bottom there where you can pick any parameters. For this location, there was nobody there in 1990. It's been growing over the last couple of years, and it's projected to keep on growing. If I was thinking about putting a store here, this is good information because I know the area is going to continue to grow in the next 10 years, the next 5 years. All right, we'll move on to another software demonstration. In this demonstration, I want to take a look at customer spending and get a better understanding of how my customers are spending money at my stores. So here I have these red circles. Those are my store locations in Boulder, Colorado. And what I'm going to do is use the Business Analyst menu to go through a little bit of a project. Remember earlier I mentioned how you use this menu from the top down. Create a study area, set up your stores and customers, create a trade area and do some analysis. We're going to go through this process. So here, build a study area. For my study area, I want to define a study area around Boulder here. So I'll make the new study area and define it to the current extent. Notice the other choices, though. Your study area could focus in on a zip code, a county, or a state. So it all depends where you're analyzing. You get to define this study area. By defining a study area, you're going to make things easier for business analysts, because instead of it having to consider every factor throughout the whole U.S., you're focusing on just this rectangle. A new layer is created defining that rectangle. Analysis you perform in the future, business analyst is going to limit its studies to this area, unless you trade or change study areas. Next, I'm going to go ahead and set up my stores. So remember, the stores could be stored in any kind of a database or some kind of a map-ready table. So it could be tabular data coming from Excel spreadsheets or an Access database or Oracle, like an ArcSDE database. I've got it on disk. It's a map-ready format. Could be GPS data. All right, we'll go ahead and follow through here. The data is in a file on my computer. It's in a shape file. So I'm going to go off and explore for that shape file. And my shape file here is called 4 stores. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the setup wizard. And there's an attribute that uniquely identifies each of the stores called Bank ID, so I'll select that. All right. You might be wondering, over in the table of contents here, it looks like I had stores and my competition already over there. So why did I have to do this setup work? Well, Business Analyst doesn't know which of the layers over here on the left side. They are point layers. It knows they're point layers, but it doesn't know which ones represent your customers or stores or competitors. So by going to the Business Analyst dropdown and setting up customers and stores, you're really telling Business Analysts exactly which layers represent stores and customers. The next thing I want to do is the customer setup. And as I go about doing that customer setup, just before, let me show you what my data looks like on disk. I have a text file with my customer addresses and their spending and the number of purchases they've made at my stores. So I have this data in a text file format. Could be any data format that ArcMap accepts, including Excel or Access and those that I mentioned earlier. Now, Business Analyst can take this file and read it in and make the point layer for you. It can turn this data in a text file into a geographic layer. I'm not going to go through that process. I've got about 2,500 customers. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes to go through that, so I'm going to go to the oven and pick up a predefined customer layer. I've already gone through the process just before this seminar. I still need to do the setup work, so I'm going to set up the customer layer. It's in a map-ready format. It's on file on my computer. I'm going to go look for it here with the Browse button. And the name of the file is called Customer File. This was created from that text file. Business Analyst made it for me through the address matching and geocoding process that it performs. And each one has a unique store ID number. I've removed the names to give some privacy on this data. All right, so here we'll add that customer layer to ArcMap. All right, so now Business Analyst knows which layer is customers and which layer is for stores. The next thing I want to do is create a trade area around each store. As I go about creating those trade areas, I'm following this menu here, and I'm going through the process in a top-down fashion. So here I'm going to create a trade area. As I create a new trade area, I'm going to this time use customer data because I have those customer locations. And I'll select the ID number for the banks and go to the customers and get the ID number for the customers that identifies each bank that they go to. And now, instead of just showing the number of customers near each store, like remember that earlier map display where I had 40% of the customers and 80%? Well, I would use this choice here by the number of customers. I'm going to wait. I'm going to do some weighting. And in the weighting here, I'm going to select spending. How much money does each customer spend? The trade area that's going to be generated then is a spending trade area. 40, 60, and 80% of spending that's coming into that store. And I'm going to generate a report through this process also. As I look at the report list, there is a whole group of reports. I could select all of these. If I did, I'd end up with probably about 200 pages of report. I'm just going to go ahead and do a demographic, income, and profile report and add that to the list over here. So we'll just end up with about 10 pages of report and some charts. And we'll just view it on the screen, but I could export it out or print it, either way. And I'll go ahead and click Finish here, and it'll calculate those trade areas for me. The trade areas, remember, are representing spending and how much spending is coming in per area. So it's not going to be number of customers, but spending. You can see in the background the trade areas have been generated, but the reports haven't. So Business Analyst is still chugging away here, making up that report for me. To make the report, it's analyzing each area and pulling out the demographic characteristics of each area. So my report here, made a 24-page report. Inside the report, I get an idea of the population and how it's changing over time. And I can step through this report page at a time, looking at the charts to see how maybe age changes over time. And the report is created for each trade area. So the 0 to 40, and you can see this one is the 0 to 60 ring. It's actually quite a detailed report. Well, when I look at the trade areas here that have been generated, they do have somewhat of an odd shape to them, and we may want to do some further analysis to find out why are they shaped that way. So here, let me turn off a few of the layers here, and I'm going to turn on the census block group layer and show the income level. So the green areas represent more than $75,000 a year. The other areas are less. So now if I turn on the trade areas, you can kind of see that the trade areas, the blue, reaches out to those green areas to get those higher income folks that come and spend a little bit more money at my stores. Maybe this could help me to focus advertising campaigns, or if I'm going to be sending like pamphlets out in the newspaper, maybe I want to focus on some of these high income areas because I know I'm getting maybe not extra customers, but they just happen to have more money to spend in my area. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Kyle here, and we'll have a bit of a question and answer. I noticed there's a lot of questions that have come in, so Kyle, why don't you try to answer a couple of these?
Sure, Rob. There's another one that came in from Balao from Columbus, and he was asking about drive times and how that was calculated. And it's a nationwide street network from TeleAtlas, North America, and every single street network or every single street segment, every single street is broken down into segments where they have attributes. And in this case, every type of classification, type of street gets assigned an attribute, and then they would actually either drive the roads or figure out a little bit more information about that through a local county or government or someone local. They would assign a speed limit, and from there you can do either routing or drive time based on those classifications. So it's a pretty neat function. And also, well, let me see here, he also mentioned about if you can have it in a congested area, and Business Analyst in the preferences has settings that you can change that is we have one called rush hour, another one for lights, so you can change the settings for the type of drive time that you might incur. High traffic times, let's say a 55 mile per hour zone would be 85 in a light, so you can go farther because you can go faster. There's less cars on the road. There are a couple questions about the system requirements, and for that I would say that it comes with a lot of data. There's 6.3 gigabytes, so you need a decent amount of storage space, and I won't get too technical on it, but I'd say that we recommend 2 gigs of RAM, and for anything else I would recommend going to support.esri.com, and you can follow the link to Business Analyst and you can get a detailed report for Business Analyst 9.1. Rob was mentioning the reports. There's a couple questions in here for the reports and what format you can get out of them. And as he was mentioning, you can do PDF, Excel format, HTML. There's Microsoft Word. You don't have to export to any formats. You can just keep it in Crystal Reports browser, and you can access them through Business Analyst at any time and save them. And that's probably all I would get to for right now, but we'll have one more question and answer session right after Rob's next presentation and demo. So Rob, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Kyle. Just want to return back to that last demo, and I want to zoom out here a little bit. Let me get a zoom out to this layer. What I really want to look at is my trade areas and my study area. And here I have my store locations and their trade areas, and those stores are doing pretty well. But take a look on this map. There's a lot of high income areas where maybe I could open some new stores. And how do I then go to look at opening those new stores? Where would I go? How would I know which place to start first? Well, that's the topic of the next lesson. So here in this lesson number 2, we looked at mapping your customers and stores, making those trade areas, creating reports to learn the demographics inside the trade areas. Those demographics are going to come in handy when we want to expand and add more stores, because we can look for locations that have the similar demographic characteristics. So going on here to the lesson 3, we want to find out how to expand a business. By expand, I don't just mean adding stores. There's more to it than that. There's finding new customers for your existing stores, serving them a little bit better, learning their demographics, then maybe finding other stores that have similar demographic characteristics. You can also use some of the demographics to figure out the product mix. You might evaluate spending characteristics and see if maybe people in the area are spending a lot of money for things you don't have in your store. You might start putting those items in your store and making a little bit more money. Well, to start off your expansion ideas, you may look at your business plan and find out, who do you expect? What kind of customers are you expecting? What are their characteristics? If you're opening up an automotive store, your main customer might be males aged 30 to 40 who happen to spend a lot on automotive supplies. Well, why not make a map of those locations? In Houston here, the red areas represent those hotspots. These are people that meet your criteria for your ideal customer. Maybe you focus your marketing efforts on these places. Maybe you locate a store near or inside one of these places. But at least you've got a starting point. These are where you expect most of your customers to come from. You can also look at consumer spending. What are people buying and how much money are they spending at given locations? Here we jumped over to Austin, Texas to find out how much people are spending on books. The green areas represent the places where people are spending a lot of money. The lighter colored green, people aren't spending as much money on books. So if you're thinking about opening a bookstore in Austin, maybe these are some of the locations you'd consider where expenditure for books is high. And how about the market penetration? Are you getting to the people inside each of the areas around your trade area, inside your trade area. So here we're looking at a map of block group areas. Each of those polygons in green represents a block group. The darker green means that you're getting a lot of customers from there as a percentage of total population. The white areas mean you're not getting as many as a percentage of total population. Market penetration is a little different than market share. Market share compares sales. Well, we have expenditures per industry. Depending upon what your industry is, if you've collected the sales numbers, you can compare your sales to the total for each of these block groups and find out if you're getting market share in each block group polygon. So do you focus your marketing in those underserved areas? Maybe. Maybe those are places you start to look for more customers. Well, Business Analyst is really good at helping you get extra information when locating a new store or trying to find new customers. And one of the techniques used is find out where the best customers are, who's spending the most money, or your best stores, which stores are performing the best. From there, you create a demographic profile. Look at the trade area, find out what are the characteristics of those customers or customers around the best store, and then you go off and find other areas that meet the same characteristics. Business Analyst will rank those areas based on variables that you select. So you may find your best store and its indicator variables, tell Business Analyst, and it'll find other places that are similar, and it'll rank them for you. So if you have a limited budget and you can only open up a few new stores, how do you decide which places you want to open? As you evaluate many of these characteristics, you might start getting those expansion ideas that, hey, we're really getting some good market penetration when we have stores in the area, but look at, there's other areas we don't have stores. Maybe if we located there, we'd get better market penetration. Before expanding, you might take a look at your competition. We have that business listings database where you could draw your stores against your competitor stores. Here, our stores are in blue. The competition is in red, those red circles. They seem to have more stores than we do. I don't know why that is, but we'd like to expand, and we might look at where they've expanded and see how successful they've been. The Business Identify Businesses tool lets you click on a business and find out name, address, phone number, and sales and number of employees. Besides just clicking one at a time on each store, you could also just turn the labeling on for each store for the sales or the employee number and find out, well, geez, those stores look like they're doing pretty well. If we put one of our stores maybe in between two of their best, maybe our store could get some of their customers away from them. When looking at taking customers away from one store, getting them to another, you may use those zones, those trade areas, to do that analysis. There's a concept called cannibalization, and that means one store is taking customers away from another store. The stores might be all of yours, and you're cannibalizing from yourself, but you may also use this analysis to compare your store with the competition. That overlap zone is the most important. Finding the overlap zone and then determining how many customers are in that overlap zone, and then figuring out whose store are they going to. If they're going to the closest store, that's probably what would happen. But one store might have something more attractive than the other that could pull them away. Maybe the store is bigger, maybe they have better prices, easier parking, easier access. So we can find out using these spider diagrams if cannibalization is occurring. If you notice here, it looks like not a lot of cannibalization is occurring. If it was, you'd see like the green line going into the other store trade areas and taking customers away from them. When you find a site to expand into, you may use the site prospecting tool. Maybe you have several sites to consider. With this tool, you can click on those sites or enter their address and make a sort of an on-the-fly, simple drive time or threshold trade area, and get one of those reports. You may also use a detailed model like the Huff model. That's going to take a lot of variables into consideration and give you some predictions as to how sales might happen in the future. The variables that this considers are distance to stores, not just yours, but your competition, store attractiveness, yours and the competition, and then those consumer expenditures in the area. Attractiveness doesn't mean, oh, it's a beautiful, beautifully painted store and the windows are pretty, but it's more like, how big is the store? What's the gross leasable area, the square footage? How many parking places does it have? Is it easy access? Can you get in and out easily? The Huff model also considers a distance decay value. That sounds like an odd math term, but what it really means is, how far are you willing to travel to buy a product? So things like milk and eggs, you're probably not going to travel that far. If you could save 10 cents, you're still probably not going to travel 30 miles to a place where you can save 10 cents on milk. You'd probably just go to your local grocer and get it there. But a car or a sort of a specialty item, you'll drive further if you can save a little bit more money, or you can go to a more attractive location. So the distance decay value really takes into consideration the type of product and how far people are willing to travel to get that product. The output from the model shows a sales estimate, how much could you expect, and it gives you a map display showing where those sales should come from. The red areas over here on the right side in the center, probably more of the sales are going to come from there than the yellow areas. All right, here we'll go on to a bit of a demonstration here to try some of this out. All right, in the demonstration, we're in Boulder again, Boulder, Colorado. We have this is our best store. It's our best performing store. If I open up the table for the store, I can find out what its attributes are. So it's the first store here, the parking, how many parking spaces does it have, how big is it in square feet, and what's the rent. This is our best store, and we'd like to find more potential locations just like it. We'd like to find places that have those similar physical characteristics like parking and rent and size, but we'd also like to find characteristics inside of its trade area. So we want to know around this store, what are the demographics? Find more places just like it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit here to take a look at our potential locations. Here we have our large circle, that's our best store. These other locations are not stores yet. We found out from our commercial real estate broker that these places are currently available in the area, and we could move into one of them next week if we wanted to. We have enough money to go to one of them, so we're going to have to pick the best one. With Business Analyst, I can use the Find Similar operation. So if I go to the Analysis menu here, working my way down, on the Analysis menu, we'll create a new analysis and use Find Similar. Find Similar is going to take characteristics from our best store and find similar places. All right, and we're going to assess the variables at the block group level. And we'll use the principal component analysis, but let me look at conventional first. With conventional, we can consider 5 variables, and that's it. Take 5 variables from the best store and find the other locations where they match. With principal components analysis, you can enter as many variables as you want, and you can pick a cutoff point, so we'll just rank the 5 best sites. As I go through here, I'm going to pick my variables here for parking and square foot and rent. Those are my physical characteristics. And then I'm going to go pick some other characteristics like total population of the area. And I'm going to look for some income value. So household income will be another indicator. And then I'm going to look for some expenditure characteristics. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here to consumer expenditure. And I'm going to look for spending on mortgages. How much are people in these areas spending on their mortgages? All right, so now we have 6 variables to look at. Business Analyst will compare those 6 variables for our best store, and it'll rank the other 7 sites. It'll rank the other 7 sites. So here are those other 7 locations. The real red one here, let me turn the labels on. All right, so the real red one, number 1, the best site, that's our indicator, our best site. This one here, number 2, that's the best alternative. And then there's a 3, 4, and 5. So maybe we'd pick number 2, maybe number 3. We might do some more analysis to figure out which one would be the best. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Kyle here to answer a couple of questions.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. We have a question here from Ann in Carson City. Does Business Analyst come with every kind of store, or do you have to create your own information with the available data? And to answer that, every business that comes in the 11 million business records from Info USA is assigned a couple of different codes to answer your question. They are the SIC codes, the Standard Industry Code, and the NAICS code, which is the North American Industry Classification Code. And based on those are kind of comparison codes of similar types of businesses. So you can break down agriculture industries, you can break down banking industries, and then further down to figure out who would sell tractors or who would sell mortgages, and kind of narrow them down. They'll all show up there, they're always there, but you can get more information. And if you click on that identifier, you can get certain information like the address and the phone number, which is a pretty neat tool. We have another question in from Jim from Denver. Can Business Analysts perform market segmentation? And yes, it can. It is a tool that is an add-on called the segmentation module that kind of can break down who lives where and why, which is what we call the tapestry information. There was a question that can this software package be used on an enterprise level, and that's what we're currently working on. It's going to be called ArcGIS Server for Business, where you can kind of deploy it throughout a network. But right now, the data, which is, as Rob mentioned, 6.3 gigabytes of compressed data, it needs a dedicated machine to run on because it's doing so much analysis and the data sets are so big. There's another question. Is Business Analyst Online the same as Business Analyst Desktop, which what we're showing today? And the answer to that is yes and no. It does the same calculations. It runs on the same technology, so you get the same exact drive time analysis, demographic variables. However, what the difference is the type of user you are. So how many times are you going to be using it? Do you need it dedicated to access it within your office? You might want to just pull off a couple reports, and that might be a more viable deal for you to just do Business Analyst Online. And that can be accessed just through ESRI's website. So I guess that probably rounds it out for questions for the third and final demo here. I'll give it back to you, Rob.
All right, thank you very much, Kyle. Well, to wrap things up here, we've tried to spend this time with you giving you some examples of how business analysts can help in business decision making. And one of the main things that it does is help you understand your customers better and get to know their demographics. Also look at your stores, define trade areas around your stores, and get to know the demographics there. That information can help you if you're looking to expand, to get more customers, to add more stores. Also to do things like marketing campaigns through advertisements, television, mail, newspaper advertisements. We've really only hit the tip of the iceberg here. So if you do want to learn more, you may take our instructor-led training class. We have a 2-day class called Introduction to ArcGIS Business Analyst. We also have a couple of white papers on our internet website. And there's a product documentation called Using ArcGIS Business Analyst, and three books from ESRI Press that give examples of how businesses are using GIS. You could also come to the ESRI website. There's a business analyst specialty area there where you can see lots of examples and explanations.